So, Phantom, season 15, it's been like 7 weeks now. Where's the State of Destiny video? Where's it at, Phantom?
So, season 15. It's a thing. It's been going on for 7 weeks. Yeah, I know. I haven't made my video. Life gets in the way and I'm extremely busy. I'm sorry. So, what's been going on with the game, and what's the other big Bungie news with this Witch Queen thing? Well, buckle in, it's gonna be a very long one today. So let's kick things off with Season 15, my initial impressions. Season Lost is now in full effect, and once again, we find ourselves following a very similar flow to Seasons 13 and 14. We once again have two new seasonal activities. We have a 6-player match-made activity in Astral Alignment, and then the 3-player non-match-made Shattered Realm, which is the weekly mission. So this is pretty much mimicking the Override Expunge loop from last season. As I mentioned in my initial thoughts video from Season 14 back in June, I didn't really have a problem with this dual activity loop. We saw it with Battlegrounds and Presage, although Presage was more of its own thing. And then Override and Expunge last season. So this time we have Astral Alignment and Shattered Realm. So kind of a back-to-back loop. For Astral Alignment, I think Bungie is still making strides in the right direction with the seasonal activities. I just can't help feeling a bit wanting after seeing it was a 2-week loop. There are 3 sub-objectives, of which 2 are selected from each run, and then a rotating boss fight with a Taken Ogre and the Scorn Rifleman lookalike. Both fights introduce some minor mechanics to it, and although I do enjoy these mid-fight breaks for the mechanics, I can't help but desire some sub-raid level difficulty on these 6-man fights, given the fact that, you have enough people in there to figure things out. Enemy density, it's been bumped up a little bit in some of the encounters, but there are some items, weapons, and armor pieces out there that are now becoming a bit too good at mopping up these low-tier combatants, and you start to get snowballing to take effect. And if you happen to have one of these players on your teams, well, good luck getting any bounty progress done. And it's one of the topics I'll hit a bit later today. We do again have another one of the classic 7x3 upgrade trees. My thoughts on this were mentioned last season, and even so the season before. I think Bungie should retire the 7x3 tree, and we've actually retrograded back to the Season of the Chosen's fixed upgrade count per week. Although, given that the upgrades this time were tied directly to the Shattered Realms weekly progression, that's not really that big of a deal this time around. Still, I'd like this to be the last time we see the 7x3 node system. On the topic of the storyline, wow. What a way to start that season off. Bungie picked up right where Season 14 ended, and through the big reveal right at the beginning. This is definitely setting the stage for the Witch Queen expansion, and you do get your one-on-one interaction with good old Savathun right out of the gate, and we have had that for a couple weeks now. I've said this before, but following Season of the Hunt, Bungie has been all in on the narrative-driven seasons. It's really beginning to show for the better here. This is exactly what I want to see going forward. Just make sure that whatever you do for Season 16 doesn't just lean on the Witch Queen for 3 months, and you'll be doing a lot better this time around. Crosspay finally went live in Season 15. The system as a whole seems to work pretty seamlessly, with very little to say on the negative side of things, and it has been a long time coming, and I am definitely glad I see it here. Also, a big fan of removing primary ammo and giving all those infinite ammo. This will definitely streamline the flow of gameplay and get rid of all those sitting around for ammo moments, so it actually makes things a lot better. Plus, I also do see the technical benefit of not having hundreds of little primary bricks laying all over the ground. Fusion rifles. Oh boy. I have been waiting a very long time for fusion rifles to get some time in the limelight. So it'll be a very nice change of pace for the next couple of months to have fusions and linear fusions as the top tier options. We also got a new exotic quest this season called Egger's Scepter, a trace rifle. The quest to obtain it was interesting for the first few weeks, giving us some more story background. I just kind of feel like the last week was a little bit grindy. I kind of wish that these steps were kind of spread out over all 5 weeks instead of it just being pushed on you all at once. In terms of Aggro Scepter, it really synergizes incredibly well with stasis builds, and it feels really good. Plus the whole catalyst interacting with your super. That's definitely something that we've been looking for from weapons for quite some time. So big win on that one. Wow, Phantom. Lots of good news. It's not all good news though, is it? Is it? Well, you're right. It's not all good news. So we didn't get any new stasis aspects or fragments, and I feel like it's kind of a bit of a blow given that we're still in the Beyond Light cycle. I know Bungie mentioned that they used the dev time instead of making new aspects for the light subclass tuning, but after the whole Warlock shaft from last season with the stasis aspect being stupidly weak, I really felt like Bungie needed to deliver a final win for stasis here, especially for Warlocks, and they did not deliver. Also on that same topic, the Lost Sector exotics this time are very meh this time around. Even more so when the Warlock ones were broken out of the gate and that didn't even work, right? And the Hunter exotic, well, big surprise, was broken overpowered. Seriously, Bungie, come on.
Take out your Nerf bat and start smacking hunters with it. Smack them over and over.
It's really time to stop showing your bias towards Warlocks and Titans, Bungie. It's obvious already. Just stop. Champions, I'll have a whole other thing about champions later on, but having only a single anti-barrier champion mod this season and having it be auto rifles is very suckish, especially seeing as we have some of the hardest and most annoying Grandmaster strikes this season. I'm not really looking forward to 6 months of Ariana's Vow and Arbalest for GMs, so yeah, not a plus there. We also got the new rep system this season, and I feel like it was tuned a bit too far towards the grindy side of Infamy compared to the streamlined side of Valor. I remember them saying that they wanted it to take approximately the same time as a Valor reset, and it really feels like it takes more like the time an Infamy reset would take if you were only winning. Especially for strikes, where at the maximum rep bonus, you're only earning 135 points for a playlist strike and maybe about 400 for a max tier Nightfall. You're asked to get 10,000 rep per reset, so that's 25 to 30 Nightfall strikes at 1350, assuming you can even do it. Bungie, you really should not lean on these whole double rep weeks here. You should instead use those as catch-up opportunities for folks who don't have a lot of playtime. Additionally, on the same topic, there are a lot of little bugs with the system not tracking and then locking players into the streak level they are prior at, and the only way they can fix it is by restarting the game, which is never ideal. This is really something I feel like tuning needs to be done, and quick. Like, fix it. Reduce the amount of score, make it like 5,000 points, and fix the streak bugs. On the exact same note, while I do like the whole means to get more items out of your resets, locking the seasonal ritual weapon and then ornament to rank system with 2 full resets is a very bad decision, especially given how 1, grindy these are compared to before, and 2, for Gambit, just how bad of a state Gambit is still in. I would have much rather had the ritual weapon and ornaments remain quest-based. So all in all, starting off strong yet again for Season 15, they did make a lot of positive strides between 14 and 15, but they also had a couple of hiccups that dropped the momentum a bit. Given that we have this season for 6 months, there is plenty of time to reclaim that momentum, but Bungie, you need to act on these problems, and they need to be fixed sooner rather than later. So that's all my talk on Season 15. So let's go ahead and shift gears and go back to what happened with Season of the Splicer. So for the past season, we helped Mithrax deal with the Endless Night. We went through an evolution of how we see the Elixni as a whole, and really had to flesh out some more characters in a very meaningful way. Story-wise, we discovered that the source of the Endless Night was the Taken Hydra Qoria, which has been under the control of, surprise, surprise, Savathun since before the Taken King, and was also directly responsible for the curse loop of the Dreaming City. So after a couple weeks of tearing through the network, we took out Korea and stopped the Endless Night. We had a couple of celebration weeks with the Solstice of Heroes, but then Lakshmi, with some fanatical leaders, tried to stage a background coup to drive the House of Light out of the city, and opening a Vex portal in a very foolish backfire spectacular. After stopping this incursion, the factions fled the city, and Osasris was seen leaving the city. Gameplay-wise, things were really good in Season 14, and I think Bungie kept this Season 13 momentum going. So let's go ahead and take everything and give my final ratings of the season. We'll start with my typical classification here, so we'll go with story first. And I give this a very high 9 out of 10. Season 14 kept the fire of the story burning bright with another exceptionally strong seasonal storyline. We had new actions week after week leading to the final conclusion, and this was great. I'm glad to see that the team kept this going. One thing I mentioned last season, I think that instead of going only 7 weeks, that should be extended to maybe about 10 weeks, so we don't really have too much of a delay. But, you know, if you don't want to, I'm fine with that too. But having the final memorial thing at the end, that was kind of a nice little touch off to the story, but it only lasted a couple days, and it really felt like it was brushed off the docket like as soon as it arrived, so there really wasn't anything to kind of round out Season 14 there. For the endgame, I gave a 7 out of 10. So the Season 14 endgame consisted of the weekly expunge missions, the return of Vault of Glass and Master Vault of Glass, and then the Grandmaster Nightfalls. The GM rotation was respectable and fun, with a good combination of challenge and farmable Grandmasters to suit players of all skill levels, while keeping the Adept weapon loop engaging. Master Vault of Glass was Bungie's answers to the hardcore, although I really feel like it was tuned a bit too much on the difficulty scale, with an additional plus 10 ask compared to other Master content in the game. I personally would have much rather seen Master Vault of Glass stay on the same level as other Master content in the game and not be on its own tier. Again, Bungie, each season should really augment the existing in-game lineup. Since the model will be to drop a year's lineup with the fall expansion, we really should be consistently growing the lineup such that it always feels like there's more to do. I said it last time, I will say it again. Keeping previous seasons' in-game content relevant for the year is the ideal way forward. So, kind of what we did with Harbinger and Presage. I do stand by that criticism from last season that Deepstone Crypt should have remained a Pinnacle source alongside Vault of Glass. Big deal if people have numerous Pinnacle sources and can hit the cap on the first or second week. Most people, they just want to get back to where they were to be able to keep playing the endgame at their own pace. We'll talk Pinnacle drops later as well. The grind, I dropped it from 7 in Season 13 to 6 this time around, and although there was some positives, there's also some very big negatives that we gotta hit. So, we saw the return of the plus 10 power increase system, which, as I mentioned in the State of Destiny 2 video, was a much needed breath of fresh air for the game's monotonous power grind. However, unfortunately, given the fact that we still have the big issue of Pinnacle drop RNG, this really isn't that big of a plus here. Umbral engrams still present, and again, we saw the addition of new Umbral focuses, but we still have the 3 Tier 3 focuses a week, and the week rank up rewards on the Umbral decoder leave more to be desired here. And then for Vault of Glass, we had yet another RNG raid exotic. Bungie, enough with the RNG already. Just bend this and go to quests, and just stay with quests going forward. No more RNG. For Grandmasters, we saw 3 new weapons and a week 4 rotation where the old weapons were mingled together. I don't really like this idea, especially given the high likelihood of having a exceptionally hard Grandmaster, like the Corrupted, be on a week with a highly desired weapon. I think it's time to bring back the old Nightfall skeleton keys with a chest that works like the raid caches, but uses the skeleton keys to get what you want. For exotics, unfortunately, Bungie, it's time to have a nice discussion here. You get a 3 out of 10 for Season 14's exotics. So let's talk. We got 2 new exotic weapons, Cryosthesia and Vex Mythoclast, both of which were beyond underwhelming on release. The Stasis sidearm was very meh because sidearms are still the worst weapon class in the game and are in need of a serious buff. Vex Mythoclast was released in a drastically weak state to prevent PvP dominance. Seriously, Bungie? Thankfully, this was addressed in Season 15, but the rating is for Season 14. That can't be why you rated so low. Haha, it gets better. Armor. Can you say Shaft the Warlocks, Bungie? Because here we go again. Hunters got Star Eater scales, which ramped up the power of their supers based on the additional amount of orbs of power collected after fully charged. This was busted to the point where they had to be disabled for Vaulted Glass and then hit with 3 adjustments in the course of 4 weeks. Like, come on, Bungie, enough with the Hunter bias already. Titans, Path of the Burning Steps, negated stasis effects on them and gave them superpowered solar weaponry while the buff was active. What about Warlocks? Well, do you like the Lumina hand cannon? Because you basically made it so our rifts have automatic Lumina, and then would extend the rift's timer minus Well of Radiance. Honestly, had they made it work on Well of Radiance, that would have been the first good Warlock exotic of the year, minus Necrotic Grips. Bungie, I am done being nice here. I'm going to start shafting your exotic ratings every time you disproportionately treat Warlocks from now on. This is your first time it's going to happen. So, stop. Gameplay. 7 out of 10. So, we had 2 new activities, Override and Expunge. Override was your 6-player match-made version of the old Contact event from Rivals, with a few minor twists and a boss fight at the end. Expunge was a linear mission with a boss fight at the end. Override felt a little wanting as it pertained to low enemy density, and Expunge was a bit short at times, although very thematic. For Stasis, there were 4 new fragments, and each class got a new aspect. Season of the Warlock Shaft was once again in full swing, with the weakest of the 3 Stasis Shardmaker aspects given to Warlocks. I literally used it for 2 weeks because Bleaker Watcher was disabled, and then bend it, and will likely never use it. Titans got Diamond Lance, which gave them a Stasis Javelin to use, but the fragment slot on it did not really match the power of the aspect here. One would have thought it would have been much more powerful and had much more of a punch, but this one really left more to be desired. And of course, Bungie's Hunter bias was as clear as day, with Hunters getting the major grenade buff aspect that broke the Crucible for a few weeks until the Stasis adjustment patch hit. Bungie, stop with the Hunter bias. We know what's happening. Just stop. Gameplay took a bit of a backward slide because of this, but other than the mentioned problems above, we're still in a good spot. Events, this time you get a 6 out of 10 because Solstice of Heroes was much better than That Shall Not Be Named games. It delivered what was expected from it, an armor grind. Thankfully this year it was very short and exceptionally fair for the time that we had. The EAZ returned, and a fragment and package grind to try to get better rolled armor and weapons. In terms of the event as a whole, I'm looking for a complete rehash next year. The EAZ has outlived its luster and its time in the game, and it's time to give us something new, Bungie. The packages from Solstice need to be a lot more generous next time. Finding the perfect roll on armor was a very, very big drag due to the low drop rate on armor, plus the bonus at the end with the quote-unquote high stat roll armor wasn't really what players would consider a high stat roll. I did like how the event this year synchronized with the seasonal storyline, and I think it was a great way to reattach to the game's universe instead of making it seem like a pointless cash grab, although most events actually still are pointless cash grabs. All in all, I would give Season of the Splicer a solid 7 on my scale of 10. It missed some strides that Chosen hit, especially due to the continued Warlock Shaft, the lack of a strong endgame exotic weapon pursuit, and some fallbacks making the endgame too hardcore focused. Story-wise, pieces are picked up a bit, with an even stronger delivery than Season of the Chosen. Bungie, hold strong on your story front, clean up your mess with warlocks, exotics, and in-game activities, and you've got it where you need it to be. So now we've talked Season 15, we've talked Season 14, let's look ahead. So we'll go into the Witch Queen and the 30th Anniversary Pack. So on August 24th, Bungie announced the next chapter of Destiny 2. So we have the Witch Queen coming, and we also have the mid-season pack, which will launch in December, in the middle of our extended 6-month season. So let's talk about the Witch Queen first. So the new destination is Savathun's Throne World.
Eat it, old Chicago scrubs.
It is a new destination filled with a swamp-themed area, a castle-themed area, some kind of a dungeon-like Depths of Hell area, and a crashed pyramid ship. We were shown that the Hive in here have somehow taken the light and will be able to have their own supers. To defeat them, they need to be killed, and then you need to destroy their ghosts. Bungie has actually been on record to say that these new Lucent Hive can be compared to champions without a stun criteria. We also have a new weapon archetype coming in the energy slot called the Glaive, a brand new weapon crafting system which will allow you to craft all Throne World and raid weapons, with more being added over the year. The campaign seems to be the very big focal point of this year's expansion, with the addition of a legend mode, which will be Bungie's answer to a more aspirational pursuit of missions. I do hope this means that replayable missions are coming back into play, and that this includes all missions from the previous expansions. Instead of a new darkness subclass this year, we're going to be getting a full rehash of the light subclasses, so all light subclasses will be getting the aspect and fragment treatment, starting with Void. I am okay with this, especially seeing as we have another expansion following the Witch Queen called the Final Shape, and that each of the next 2 expansions are looking to have new darkness subclasses. Finally, we will be getting a new raid, and there will be another new 6-player match-made activities in addition to the upcoming raid in the new destination. For the most part, what I looked and saw in the reveal trailer for the Witch Queen looked to be very impressive. My hopes are that the scale of this new destination are as massive as it was shown to be, such as it's a very big destination to explore, and given the fact that we're talking about Savathun here, I really hope that Bungie has gone back to their ways of hiding secrets to find over the course of the upcoming year. I'm a bit hesitant on weapon crafting, removing part of the aspirational side of the game's loot pursuit. For example, if it becomes too easy to obtain god rolls for everything via weapon crafting, the game's chase factor will become very stale. On the flip side, I'm very hesitant to accept this system given the stingy nature of transmog. Transmog is very unobtainium for most players due to the lockouts, and we do not need weapon crafting to follow suit of the unobtainium nature of things. I also hope that this year's expansion doesn't just end with the exact same loop as all other expansions of us killing off another big story element in Savathun. Because of just how much Savathun has been weaved into our story over the last 6 to 7 years, I really hope that Bungie's promise of a storyline with villains that conclude over the full arc is met, instead of just another one of those, we go there, we kill her, the end. The second thing that was announced was the 30th Anniversary Pack, which will launch in December, and it will feature a new free 6-player activity, a new dungeon, the return of Gallarhorn, and a lot of nods to Bungie's past titles. I think the thing right out of the gate is a lot of people have been hitting on that $29.99 ask price and saying that it only offers a dungeon and some cosmetics, and that seasons give you a lot more for only $10. I agree, but let's be a little cautious on that. Another big thing, where's the Halo stuff at, Bungie? Surely you could have worked out something with Microsoft here, being a title you've worked on in the past, and also since you have that whole agreement with them in Game Pass right now. Folks, all in all, I think it's a bit too early to hold your full criticism here. As an anniversary pack, Bungie is very likely to make nods to all titles, Halo included, and they will have a lot of things that are likely hidden in this pack and didn't want to show us to keep as a big surprise. In terms of what was shown, I think the ask price is a bit high for what they showed on the 24th, but if Bungie is definitely hiding other goodies and have a lot more in that pack than we've seen, it could very well match expectations of what was shown versus the price. All in all, the big message here, stay tuned. I'll follow up with the pack as we get close to it and we get more news on it. All right, now we got to hit major topics on the game and the big problems. We're going to start with a PvP topic. Now, I usually don't dabble in anything PvP related, as I see it as a major afterthought of the game and usually a source of problems more than anything else. But given the fact that Bungie has pushed the other playlists into the limelight for Ornament Quest this season, there is something that needs to be said, and we're going to talk about matchmaking today. Matchmaking for PvP and Gambit has fallen way out of control to the point where the game itself can no longer be enjoyed. Bungie, I have probably blocked more players in the past 6 months than the combined 6 to 8 years I have played Call of Duty titles in the past. I have encountered players who have no place in the games that I am in. Either they are way too skilled on the opposing team, or they have no skill and are on my team. I have encountered players on console who are clearly cheating with controller mods, who have done incredible 180s and headshotted me with sniper rifles, who have shot me through walls. I have encountered highly toxic players that make the Division's Dark Zone look like paradise compared to the hellscape that I have been thrust into in some matches. It got bad enough that I submitted a support ticket to try to at least get somebody to acknowledge the problem, only to get the standard response email that, "We're sorry you're having issues, but this isn't the place to ask the question." Bungie, it is time to stop shoving this under the rug and do something about it. Especially given the introduction of crossplay and the return of trials this season, there is no reason for this one to be shoved by the wayside. Also, as a reminder to everyone here, Destiny is not, nor ever will be, a competitive title. It is not an esports title. It never will be, nor will it ever hold compatibility as such. The PvP in this game fits more of an arcade shooter definition, and thus I feel as if adjustments to matchmaking behavior must be considered and applied. First, I really want to see the algorithm for skill reset at the beginning of each season. Having a stretch of good games will usually permanently move you up a bracket, and once you get too high up, you reach a ceiling where your games will never become enjoyable and instead are treated way too competitively. If you then lose a stretch of games in that new bracket, you aren't lowered back down to where you were previously. It leads to a case where you lose long streaks of games having no control over it, or you just give up and just never play PvP again. This needs to stop. Lost streaks should be seen as the algorithm failing to do its job correctly and reset. Second, this is mainly for Iron Banner, but team-based matchmaking needs to be enforced. If you are in a team of 6 players, you only play 6 players on the other team. 5s should only play 5s, 4s should only play 4s. Once you go below 3, then you can start to mingle in with these smaller group sizes, but that should be the rules for large teams, is that they should play groups of the same size. Now, this final one's a bit contentious and will likely be seen as contentious for a lot of people. But the platform and in-game block players list must be respected by matchmaking. If you block a player, that should be the last time you ever see that player in Destiny. They should not be allowed to match with you in any mode. End of story. Also, if you report a player for cheating and or exploiting, this must also be considered blocking a player. Bungie, I don't care if you think this has implications for competitive modes, such as people blocking high-skilled players to never match with them again. It's not a competitive title. Also, this reaches the cadence of your own terms of service, Bungie. If you define a player as blocked for griefing you, then that is seen as someone who's engaging in harassing behavior, which in your own terms of service is a bannable offense. So why wouldn't you enforce it as a matchmaking rule? Matchmaking is serious detriment to the game's PvP and Gambit right now, and it's fueling many, and I mean many, of the problems with it. I feel like this needs to be the highest priority fix to the game right now. It will fix so many problems with large-scale PvP while other updates are being worked on. Next up, something I've hit many times before, and will continue to hit because it hasn't been fixed yet, and that is the Pinnacle grind. It seems like season after season, players are getting hit with strings of bad luck when it comes to RNG and drops in the game. I continually see stories of players getting 4+ energy weapons in a row, or going 4+ weeks without seeing a single piece of armor keeping them from maximum power. This is augmented by the fact that there are a limited number of Pinnacle drop sources in the game, and it seems like each season doesn't really help the problem here because we never really add a permanent source of Pinnacle gear. We just make a new source while removing the previous season's source of gear. This is a big reason why I've advocated time and time again for either a rework of the entire system or a temporary fix, or Bungie just becoming less stringent on drops and retaining old Pinnacle sources such as Deepstone Crypt instead of just removing them every time a new thing comes out. Last time I did a State of Destiny 2 video, I shared both ideas. The basic gist was for the temporary fix, you would have a new system that has a list of weekly challenges, and each challenge would have a fixed set. So you would have a helmet challenge, a gauntlets challenge, a chest piece challenge, and then when you completed them, you would be guaranteed a +1 Pinnacle in that specific slot. Easy enough to code up and easy enough to implement, and it would fix so many problems while the longer term fix is cooked up. For the longer term fix, I proposed a rework of the system as Pinnacle 2.0, where you replace Pinnacle drops with a seasonal Pinnacle shard currency, where +1 sources would give you 1 shard, and then +2 sources would give you 2 shards with other sources added as time went on. To increase the power of your gear, you would then use the Pinnacle shard currency to increase the power level of that item by 1 point per shard. So instead of it being RNG on which gear gets leveled up, the players had control of which pieces they wanted to level up at any given time. The big thing here, Bungie, is enough is enough. The hamster wheel grind has gotten old after this many seasons. It's time for the rework of the system. You even acknowledge this as an issue the players were having a very long time ago, but you haven't acted on it yet. So I ask why. Next up, Artifact. I hit this last time with a brief concept for Artifact 2.0. I said this was something that was probably low priority and something that would likely have to be done down the road. But I changed my mind, especially given the fact that the mods for this season really aren't helping. I'm now in the mindset that the time for change has come. So last time, I proposed rework that would replace unlocking 12 nodes with a system that would eventually unlock all 25 nodes in a set order. I proposed granting hardcore grinders their choice of permanently unlocking a seasonal mod if they hit rank 250 in a season, but this unlocked mod would then cost 1 extra energy for balancing purpose and be a one-time unlock deal. I liked that idea, but going back on it, I think that maybe it's time to actually redo the entire Artifact system as a whole. So I want to pitch a slightly different idea this time around. So go hand in hand with the champion idea I have coming up as well. One of the biggest gripes I have with the endgame right now is that champion mods have become the limiting factor on fun for the game. It really seems like every season there's just one really weak weapon class that Bungie is trying to highlight without actually hitting the reason why people don't use it in the first place. Looking at you, sidearms. This is also compounded with cases in which one weapon class is repeated season after season, which soft locks loadouts and in-game content. We already tried the whole concept of soft locked loadouts and in-game content with the Prestige Eater of Worlds and Spire of Stars, and it was universally hated by the community. Bungie. I understand that you don't want the one weapon answer, but the problem is when the defined answer simply is so weak that it places unnecessary risk on the player. On the topic for this season, barrier auto rifles require a long duration sustain on the champion, which in Grandmaster and Master Vault of Glass requires standing in an open line of sight for an extended period to pull off the stun. Compounded with the newly found high enemy density in some strikes, it's becoming an artificially inflated difficulty system where the seasonal content is now much more difficult than it was intended to be on its initial release. Personally, I think it's time to rehash the seasonal artifact as an aspirational objective to be completed each season rather than the necessary evil of the season to be allowed to participate in the end game, so your champion mods. So let's talk about my idea. And the big concept here is instead of having the 5x5 node, we introduce a skill tree system. So instead of having your 5 columns of grouped perks, you will have nodes, and these will then be focuses. And your players can then choose which of the focuses they want to work on. So the first set of focusing will be champion stunning, the second one will be weapon handling, the third is ability enhancement, the fourth is player enhancement, and then the final is support enhancement. Some of these focuses will contain mods, and some of them will be passive bonuses that are unlocked upon reaching the level. The big change here is that there are no more token unlocks on the artifact. So instead of it being you level up, you choose which mods you unlock, but in order, it is now you pick a focus. As you earn experience points, the XP goes into that focus, and then you level up that focus, and then as the focus gets high enough level, you unlock the mods there. So let's talk about the 5 focuses. We'll start with champion stunning. Champion stunning would be all mods. A majority of these mods will always be available every season, so there are no more seasons where you have to be forced into a certain weapon type. So from now on, champion mods would be available for all weapon types. However, this comes with a caveat. We'll talk about that in a moment. So we'll start with the new mods. So we have Barrier Shredder, which would give you anti-barrier for SMGs, sidearms, and auto rifles. Barrier Striker for hand cannons, shotguns, fusion rifles, and swords. Barrier Destroyer for grenade launchers, rocket launchers, linears, and machine guns, and then Barrier Sniper for scouts, pulses, bows, and sniper rifles. For Unstoppables, the groups are SMGs, ARs, and machine guns, hand cannons, shotguns, fusion rifles, and swords, scouts, bows, pulse rifles, and snipers, and then grenade launchers, rockets, and linears. For Overloads, the groups would be SMGs, ARs, pulses, and sidearms, hand cannons, shotguns, and fusion rifles, scouts, bows, snipers, and linears, and then rockets, grenade launchers, machine guns, and swords. These aforementioned mods would be universal group mods, so they work on multiple weapon types. The difference is these would be low-powered mods. So you can still do the champion stunning, but it would take you more to do so. So for example, if you just shoot a champion once with an unstoppable round, it stuns it. Well, one of these new mods might take 3 to 5 shots, except where it doesn't make sense, like a rocket launcher would still only be 1. We would then also have in that same category specialized mods, and these would be the champion mods as they currently exist, and they would only be on select types each season. So it'd be no change other than a name alteration. So a precise barrier sniper, for instance, would be enhanced anti-barrier capabilities to sniper rifles. Well, that would just basically be anti-barrier sniper rifle as it exists today. The goal here, Bungie, is to allow players to play how they want to, but if they're looking to optimize their builds to have the best outcomes for champion effects, then they have to use the curated mods. But this removes immediately the whole concept of forced loadouts when it comes to champions. Second group of mods would be the weapon handling mods. Again, this would be where we start to see some passive bonuses in the new system. So currently you would have the dexterity reserves, loaders, etc. mods at cheaper costs or in bundle forms. You would then introduce passive bonuses that would grant a permanent bonus to the player for that given season. So for instance, you have a passive reserves bonus for a permanent 5% increase to reserves to whatever weapon type is given for that season. So for instance, you could have like a 5% increase to linear fusion rifle reserves or something like that. The third group is ability enhancement. As the name suggests, any ability focused mods would go there. So things like the current melee and grenades champion stun mods, any regen mods like glacial inheritance. Super mods would not be in this section. They would be in the player enhancement section. You could also have some passive bonuses in here for specific abilities or specific elements. So you could have like a stasis striker, which grants all stasis abilities a 10% recharge rate bonus for the season. The fourth group would be player enhancement, and this is your player specific bonuses. So things like passive guard or abilities that affect your players for being on a specific element, like pyretic embrace would be in this column. Super mods would also be in here to balance out the number of mods between ability enhancement and player enhancement. You would also have passive bonuses for XP boosts here. Finally, we have the support enhancement, and this is for team support mods. So likely no passive bonuses, but they would be all mods here. So things like particle deconstruction, fire and ice, and etc. would go into the final group here. Additionally, in the center of the artifact's overall skill tree, there will be a special node which unlocks once all 5 upgrade trees are completed for a season. So you try to balance it so you maximize around 250 season rank here. Once you reach this node, you will be able to select one mod from the season to carry with you after the season ends. When you unlock this node, you will also get a single artifact recollection token, which can then be consumed to reset the selected mod on the artifact. So, for instance, if you pick a mod and then decide later that you wanted a different mod, you could use the artifact recollection token to reset it one time. The goal here is to build the artifact into a seasonal pursuit, allowing players to, instead of being locked down to a specific column where they want to set their focus, to be able to instead choose how they want to level up their artifact. It's important to note that the focus can be changed at any time. So for instance, if a player hits like a roadblock with an activity because of champions, they could shift their focus to champion stunning and then go rank up a few times to unlock a mod they need, then go back to the activity. This means that each focus category, so all 5 of the focus categories, would have their own XP table. So the first few levels of each focus would be quick, and then the time commitment would then increase, but changing to a different focus would then follow the table based on what level they were at for that particular focus. Basically, this means that each of the 5 focuses has a level, and that progress is not shared for all 5, but are independent from one another. This is something that is likely going to take a lot of time to complete, but it should give an idea of how the artifact becomes something much more interesting from season to season, and give players a lot more control over it. Alright, we're almost done. Got a couple more things to hit. Let's immediately jump into the tie-in point of Artifact, which is Champions, since this goes hand in hand. Now, when Champions were introduced back in Season 8 with Shadowkeep, I was a bit intrigued. It seemed like an interesting mechanic to up the ante on some combatants, making them a bit more powerful, but giving you a counter option. At least for the first 2 seasons, it wasn't really that bad because you could usually burst damage champions down quick enough to get past the requirement of the counter option. This changed in Season 10 with the Grandmaster Nightfalls, when champions became much more bulky and started to become quite the nuisance. Furthermore, you can no longer burst them and would usually need to run through multiple stuns to be able to kill them. On top of this, some champions had bug states that could develop, making it impossible to stun them, and they would proceed to run right over you without any chance of a counter to them. This, alongside weak champion mod choices for some seasons, has really burnt out the interest factor on champions and instead turned them into something that a lot of people are just tired of. All in all, I think it's time for Champion 2.0 to hit Destiny, and we shift the balance back to Season 8, where stunning is encouraged but not required to defeat champions. With the changes to the artifact I proposed, there are a few other things we can do to spice up the mix, and this is something that can be done really quickly, and Bungie, I think it's time to get this done. We'll start with barrier champions. For all barrier champions, I would like it so that when they activate their shield, they slowly regenerate their health. No more this instant full regen BS. I want the health regen to be at a fixed rate, and then as soon as the barrier is hit by any anti-barrier effect, it is stopped immediately and cannot restart for 5 seconds following the hit. Also, I would like the amount of health regeneration to be capped at 20% per shield activation, maybe 25 or 30 for Grandmasters, but that the rate of healing is unchanged. When a barrier is activated, I would like the champion to be locked from using their barrier ability again for 30 seconds for any reason. Instead, the champion will seek cover. This means that stasis freezing no longer resets the champion's shield state, so that 30-second countdown cannot be reset by a freeze. Alright, now let's talk about individual champion types. We'll start with the servitors, since they are seen as the most annoying of the champions for barriers. Bungie, I think it's time to make anti-barrier rounds penetrate the shields that the barrier servitors project. For the other barrier champions, I would like them to become more of a shield-giving enemy. So for the knights, I would like them to be able to create walls of darkness on allies that are being shot at. For hobgoblins, I would like it so that the barrier hobgoblin gives nearby allies the hobgoblin shield and restore ability. And then for Colossus, that they can give their allies a protective shield from time to time. Just to kind of unify and make barrier champions a bit more universal. All right, Overload Champions. This is where a lot of work needs to be done. They are very buggy right now, and they need to be fixed before any more work can be done for individual champions. First and foremost, Bungie, you need to standardize Overload stunning. Make it so they cannot be unstunned for anything in a set time. They cannot leap out of it for anything, so that means stasis including. This might be a bit contentious, Bungie, but I do not want Overload champions to be able to regenerate their health. I think Overload champions should be more focused on ability spam and not be chunky targets that are unkillable. I think Overload champions in their name should be able to overload nearby combatants, giving them the ability to use their abilities more quickly as well. I think when you use Overload rounds on the champion, it should suppress the champion and nearby enemies hit as well. To compensate for these changes, I think it's okay to increase their health by a little bit, but the aspect of them infinitely regenerating health, that needs to stop. For Unstoppables, I think the only thing that needs to happen is that the occasional bug state where Unstoppables can leap out of their stun state and not be stunnable again for a lot longer needs to be fixed, but otherwise, all other aspects of them are perfectly fine. So with these in mind, a couple of fixes. The champions become a bit less oppressive, and engaging with them becomes a bit more standardized and should shift the balance back to where I would like it to be. The last thing I want to talk about today is something you probably would never think I would ever talk about. Oh, wow. What could that be?
Wait, is Phantom about to ask for nerfs?
I know, it's crazy, right? How could the balance up guy ever step foot in the Nerf arena? Well, it deals with when the game loses out on the rapid pace fun factor due to something that has become too dominant. For PvE, what I'm referring to is low tier ad shredding, which is my way of defining when you have a weapon or ability combo that allows you to wipe out massive numbers of enemies without much effort going into it. Combined with the fact that strikes, yes, strikes, have become competitive due to bounties that are not shared across the team. Bungie, all strike bounties should be shared progress at this point. You have a recipe for disaster. The biggest problem child in the game right now is Trinity Ghoul. Weapons like Sunshot and Graviton Lance are pretty close behind, however. The fact of the matter is it's too easy to trigger the primary effect on these weapons, and most of the time they create a feedback loop that allows you to endlessly use it over and over again. I actually had a player in a Nightfall switch to Trinity Ghoul because I was getting too many kills with my sidearms and my fusion rifles because my bounties had me using sidearms and fusion rifles. This person then proceeded to follow me around everywhere and would swipe every last kill for me that they could. You know who you are. I blocked your ass the moment the strike finished, and you will not be playing with me any time in the future. Bungie, I understand the desire to keep some high-powered items in the game, and yeah, it's fun. But when people start abusing them in conjunction with the non-shared bounties, it really starts to drain the fun factor of the game. So I think it's time to bring these items back down to the ground. So we'll start with Trinity Ghoul. I think the weapon should be changed such that you can get the lightning arrows when you get the precision final blows, but then it gets a 30-second cooldown before you're allowed to use lightning arrows again. The catalyst would then be changed to reduce that cooldown to 20 seconds while also granting it the effect that it currently does. For Sunshot and Graviton, I think the only thing that needs to happen is that you change the requirement such that the effect is triggered on precision kills, and then the catalyst could give you the effect to give you a chance to trigger on non-precision kills. A couple of armor pieces are close to this right now, thinking like necrotic grips for warlocks, but at this time I don't think they're in need of any kind of a major adjustment here, but they're up on that board to start watching it. And then the only thing for PvP, Bungie, that I want to talk about today is that you've made incredible strides reining in shotguns, but you left the most oppressive shotgun untouched. I'm talking about Chaperone. This thing needs to be obliterated. The range on this is downright stupid, and the fact that it can one-tap a player out of a super, just stop, Bungie. I've dealt with so many people who've crutched on this thing so hard in PvP because of its broken state and then act like they're some kind of god incarnate because of it. Put these players in the dirt where they belong and nerf the hell out of it. There are a few other things I'd like to see, but as it stands right now, these are the biggest areas that I'd like to see Bungie hit first, and then we can talk later. So yeah, I've spoken a lot of words. It's, yeah, a lot of stuff. I think the big thing that needs to happen right now is the minor bugs and issues created by Season 15, especially with the amount of grind on the reputation systems for the playlist. Second, and sometime in the middle of Season 15, Bungie needs to take a serious pass on Warlock Exotic Armor and issue some serious buffs to the Warlocks. The Hunter bias needs to end, and Warlocks need to be given fair treatment on their power levels with their exotics to start matching the power levels of the other classes. Continuing from this, I think Bungie needs to issue the last set of Stasis aspects and fragments for Stasis, alongside a serious buff to the Warlock's Crystal aspect and the Titan's Diamond Lass aspect to give them into the usability. PvP and Gambit matchmaking adjustments need to be done. They need to be done this season, Bungie. Don't put it off any longer. Looking ahead, the biggest things that need to happen were covered at the end of the video. The Witch Queen should be a reset point for the Pinnacle system, and I think that Artifact needs to be done sometime next year. Champions should also be hit at the same time, although I would like to see overloads and barriers fixed this season if possible. Finally, low-tier ad shredders like Trend Eagle, as much as people don't want to see it, they need to be nerfed to allow other weapons to be used. Alright, that's going to do it for my thoughts on where the game stands right now. Definitely a lot to look forward to with the 30th pack and the Witch Queen, but Bungie needs to start addressing some of these long-standing problems that are starting to have a negative impact on the state of the game as a whole. I continue to stand by my feedback here. If these major issues get addressed, it will not only make the state of the game better, but inject a whole new level of engagement and replayability into the title, which will allow players to actually have fun in some of the higher tier content, or not to be driven to rage in PvP when matchmaking unfairly balances the teams. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for today. I know I've spoken a lot of words. Just so you know, my script here is 16 pages long, and it has covered a lot. But it was all things that needed to be said, so I am sorry for the ultra long video. Also, again, sorry for the delay, but, you know, life happens. I'll have another update video in 2 months when we get to the 30th pack release to update where things stand, or if anything major needs to be spoken about then. Otherwise, that's going to do it for today. Thank you for sticking around and watching this very long video. If you have any thoughts, be sure to share below, and I will see you next time.